Experts by experience. Real conversations, real people, real stories.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of our Experts by Experience podcast. Today, I'm joined by a special guest. Very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi Nick, lovely to be here. My name is Noel Moran and I'm the director of an organisation called Noela Yoga Wellness and Training. So we're a national training company that deliver trauma-informed and wellness type training pretty much within every sector up and down the country. But my journey didn't begin there, hence why I'm here kind of talking today. My journey began within the criminal justice system, where unfortunately in 2006, I got sentenced to an extremely long time within prison. I was a young 21-year-old. I got a life sentence with a minimum tariff of 15 years. And we'll talk about that more kind of within the episode. But within that time, I became a yoga teacher. And I think adopting mindfulness and yoga into my life really kind of helped to shape me when I was in custody. I would even go on to say it helped me to set my mind free whilst experiencing such a difficult time with the pressures within inside and the pressures with outside. I wanted to take that a little bit further. I became a yoga teacher within prison. I delivered over 4,000 hours of teaching. And then when I moved to open conditions, then once I was eligible to start working out in the community, I got a job as a business manager for an international training company who go back within the prisons and implement lots of different kind of wellness type projects. And there I evolved within multiple different kind of training fields. And luckily then I met a director of another training company at the same time. And she offered me a scholarship within their training company. So between both companies, I was just taking in as much information and learning as much as I possibly could. And then eventually then when I got out, which would be 4 years actually last week, so I served 15 years and 2 months. I stayed with the company that I was with for about a year, and then I decided to take a big, massive leap of faith and set up my own training company. One of the reasons why I did that was because I noticed what I was doing as a facilitator. I was bringing more of a different kind of holistic type approach to my training, which I noticed there wasn't ever facilitators doing the same thing. And I wanted to kind of take that a little bit different. So last year alone, I delivered to over 4,500 frontline professionals, over 500 service users. I won the National Facilitator Award for Best Live Facilitator of the Year and Best New Facilitator of the Year. I've done TEDx talks. I'm doing multiple different kind of motivational speaking and public speaking. That's a very condensed down version of my kind of story. Otherwise, we'd probably need about 55 episodes to kind of cover it. But that's pretty much me in a very short, condensed story.
I love that. Thank you, Noel. It's also great to hear like the arc of it and it ends on a TED talk. Yeah. And obviously, no, your story never ends. No. But I love that. And we got to the pinnacle and we did the TEDx talk, which is amazing. It's a really, really good talk. So thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself. Obviously, we've worked together in various ways throughout the last couple of years, but today specifically, you're going to be talking about resilience, which I'm sure you've picked up a huge amount of through the work that you've been doing in yoga and wellness training and all of this. So I guess the first question, the first place we're going to go is, what is resilience to you? What does resilience mean to you?
I think resilience means to me, I kind of give you an example. So when I first kind of went into custody, I didn't really see a glimmer of hope. I couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. You see all these people and all these stories of people getting life sentences, going years and years over tariff, and everybody telling me that I'm going to be one of those people. And I think from the very first time I heard that, I was like, no, I've got 15 years. I'm going to be out in 15 years. And I think that probably represents my kind of resilience itself, that I knew that I was going to stay mentally strong and physically strong throughout that time. Don't get me wrong, it's easier said than done. But I think that probably stems a little bit further back as well, from my kind of adolescent years to my kind of childhood years, because I haven't had it easy throughout childhood and adolescent years. There's been kind of many setbacks. Many kind of times I've been faced with adversity that I've had to kind of deal with that. And I suppose the little things that happen over these periods of time within my own frame of reference has probably kind of created that kind of strength and resilience throughout my time. So as I've got older, I've been able to manage that a little bit better, shall we say. It's sad to say that sometimes we have to go through difficult things in our lives to build us, to get us to that next step. But it's also how we view it as well. When we think about post-traumatic growth, if we look at that from a positive mindset, then we're going to proceed with a positive mindset. If we're stuck in that negative thought pattern, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, then we find ourselves kind of stuck within that loop and not able to move forward.
Yeah. Did you say post-traumatic growth?
Yes.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, so post-traumatic growth. So when we think about trauma, and prison within itself are extremely traumatic places, post-traumatic growth is when we grow from trauma. So if you think about the work that I'm doing now, that's a prime example of post-traumatic growth. So I'm somebody who's gone through the system, been extremely traumatized, but I've chosen to view my trauma from a real positive mindset. And as a result of that, it's allowed me to grow, which is post-traumatic growth, allowed me to grow from my trauma. But if I had that kind of fixed mindset and kind of just stuck within that loop of, this is it, like, this is how I'm going to accept things, this is hating the system, hating everything around me, constantly letting my mental and physical state go down and down and down, then to be honest, I'd probably still be in prison, which then obviously is the opposite then to post-traumatic growth.
Yeah. Wow. That's, I think I'm going to use that every day now. Honestly, Noel, that is so brilliant because we really pigeonhole ourselves when we, say a term like post-traumatic stress, right? Because or post-traumatic like trauma in any way, it feels solidified. It feels like we have to stay there. So I love the optimism around growth, putting growth in there. You spoke a little bit about kind of going into custody and adolescence and childhood. I'm interested in how you think your environment impacted your emotional well-being, kind of like at that first, I guess, in the first stage of your life.
What, my environment before prison, are you talking?
Yeah. How did it affect your well-being, do you think?
I suppose because being brought up in the kind of 80s and 90s, kind of within school, it was a bit of a challenge because being Irish and with the troubles and everything going on kind of within Ireland, there was a hell of a lot of discrimination. And kind of with that, I found myself then getting in fights pretty much every day of the week. And I didn't go out picking these fights, but I would always kind of stand up for myself. I would always defend myself. And I think the real kind of thing for me where on reflection now, I feel failed by the education system because I got expelled at the beginning of year 8. So it was like 2 weeks into year 8. So I would have been 12 or 13. And I was told by every school in the borough that no school would accept me. And on reflection, I was a child. And to tell a child that no school is going to accept you, that means I'm not getting an education, which I'm entitled to. So then I ended up going to a cruise, which was kind of a 2-day a week. And the teachers and everybody within the school would label us as the naughty kids. This is the naughty school. So automatically, when you're put in a situation where you're labeled as a naughty kid, then you're going to play up to the label. And I think that's kind of what happened kind of within my earlier years. And I decided to leave there. I left there at 14 and then didn't get any further education after that, which then I'm hanging around on the streets and I'm kind of messing around, and which led me then obviously to getting caught up with the wrong people and landing myself a very long stint within the prison system.
Yeah, we often talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy, don't we? If you tell a young person that they are one thing or an archetype or destined for this one thing, it's really hard for that young person who's still learning about themselves and learning about the world to see that they could be anything else.
Yeah, even you see a bunch of young lads hanging around with each other on a deprived council state. One or two of them gets up to no good. Before you know it, the rest are caught up on a giant enterprise because they're hanging around with them. And then they're labelled as a gang. But actually, they're not a gang. They're just a bunch of lads from the same estate hanging around each other. But from a criminal justice point of view, then these lads then are labelled as a gang. And then if you label them as a gang, what do they become?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so I guess thinking about all of this and all the complicated things that were happening for you in your life at that earlier stage, and what you know of resilience now, do you feel like resilience is something that you're born with, that every human is born with, or is it something that you learn?
I think it's something that you learn. I don't think it's something that you're born with, because things have to happen to us throughout our lives. And like I spoke about post traumatic growth earlier on, and I think one of the biggest things that I speak quite a lot about, and you'd know being on my training, and I do it within every training I do, it's about when we talk about being trauma informed, it's about being trauma informed to ourselves. So when we are faced with adversity, sometimes we can react in a particular way that we can feel triggered, and we can go and we can respond and we can present as argumentative or aggressive or non-engagement, or we might just completely kind of withdraw. But when we start to be more trauma informed and start taking care of ourselves that little bit better, we recognize that actually I am feeling triggered. What coping mechanisms do I need to do to be able to kind of bring me down? How do I deal with a situation? So if I'm speaking with, say, a probation officer and I'm feeling this way, is this the right time for me to be having this conversation? Or do I need to be quite open and say, look, I'm not feeling in a great place right now. Can we take a little time out and go and do whatever it is that you need to do to be able to kind of bring yourself down? And we've all got different coping mechanisms, because I can give a list of what things work for me, but it's different strokes for different folks, so it might not particularly work for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess your thought is that we build these tools over time, we build these coping mechanisms over time, and we build our resilience over time. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
definitely.
And it is like us. We need things to happen to us. We need to learn it. It's like whether we're driving a car, whether we're riding a bike. All these are acquired skills that we have to kind of learn throughout our lives. And I think like we've all got a different frame of reference. So you might have someone from a really kind of privileged background that hasn't necessarily been faced with adversity within their lives. But that doesn't mean that they haven't got their own problems as well. There'd be certain things that we might find, oh, that's nothing to me. But for that person, it might be the biggest thing in the world as well. So we've all got different stress levels in terms of how we respond to that.
Yeah. And giving that empathy to yourself of going, actually, it can be worth moving through these things. You know, the
Yeah.
phrase, you've got to go through it.
Yeah.
That children's book of like the bear hunt, where they're like, we want to go around it, we want to avoid
Yeah.
it at all costs. And actually the lesson is you go through it, you move through
Yeah.
the lesson, and that's where you grow.
And also, it's good to recognize that not every stress is bad, that we have a positive stress, which is called our EU stress. And we need some stresses within our lives to give us that motivation, to give us that adrenaline to go on and do what it is that we need to do. Because if we didn't have that, we'd be so laid back, we'd be lying down and we wouldn't get nothing done.
So true. So true. Has there been any kind of people, role models, or maybe like media, books, quotes, whatever it is, that's really helped you with this mindset? Can you think of anyone?
I think I've always adopted a really kind of positive mindset. Like it's been really good for me. But I think if I can think of like someone who really inspires me and I really look up to, then I'm going to say it's a lady, Tammy Banks, which you know yourself. She has just been the most kind of wonderful mentor, I think, for me, because getting out of prison, finding a sense of belonging where you actually kind of fit in the world. And she's been the only professional that I've come across that actually recognizes my trauma. And she's been like trauma informed to me in a way that I don't think any other professional has, which really then has helped my growth. And then when I look at her, she's a director of a national training company, and I'm now a director of a national training company, and I really kind of aspire to kind of get to where she is. And she's done that through hard work herself. Like, I'm not going to go too much into her backstory, but she's been someone who's faced a lot more difficulties than me, kind of within her life, stemming from childhood up through her adolescent years, and just how she's adopted post-traumatic growth and how she's grown from that, and now being kind of director of her own company. She works within Parliament, kind of within Westminster and things like that. And for me, just to know that there is people out there like that, that are willing to kind of help and support me myself. And even just kind of within my business, like I reach out to multiple different CEOs and directors of different companies, and just their level of understanding and how much they really do want to support. But if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't speak to people and let people know about yourself and kind of get them to learn and trust you as a person, then I think the public is always going to have that perception of people kind of within the criminal justice system. But what it really boils down to is people are people are people. We're all the same. We just, unfortunately, some people get caught up within different things, but it doesn't make them a bad person.
Absolutely. So well said, Noel. And it also links on to I guess, another part of the conversation, which is like, what can people that aren't like living in and around the criminal justice system, what can they do to support people that are incarcerated around resilience? Like, is there anything that we can do to shift public perception? I know these are very big questions.
I think, I'll give you an example. I think insurance companies are the biggest ones. So, like, say for example, now you put in a car insurance quote, and with a conviction, it charges you thousands of pounds more than what it does with a non-conviction. And that's not just insurance companies, that's corporate companies, that's all over the place. There's always that perception of somebody kind of with a criminal conviction. And I think they have to take some corporate responsibility. The community have to take some responsibility, because the more that we push people away with convictions, the problem what that's going to cause them, we're creating a risk within society. Because if we're not giving people opportunities, we're not giving them jobs, then what are they going to do? They have to pay their bills, they have to survive. And then unfortunately for some people, then they're going to go back to old habits. They're going to go back to what they know. And it's interesting because I asked the insurance company, I was speaking to one of the brokers, and I said, why is it so more expensive with people with convictions? And he said, well, because they're more of a risk. And I said, okay, answer me this question. I said, statistically, people with convictions is probably less than 1% of the population of people who have insurance. So who frauds the insurance companies more? Is it people with convictions or people without convictions? And he's like, oh, yeah, exactly. So that answers your question. So that just makes that's a whole perception. It's a stereotype. It's a stigma, but it's not an actual fact.
Yeah, and it's damaging, right? Because
Very
like
damaging.
you said, we need to be working towards a world where we're living more homogenously, where we're living more together. Yeah. And society needs, there are still so many ways in which society's like preconceptions of what somebody's life looks like when they are in prison that I think need to be shifted and changed. There's a big responsibility on communities there, like you said, as well as corporate companies.
Because these people have to get out and they're going to live next door to one of us at some point. So who do we want living next door to us? Somebody that's been cared for, somebody that's been worked with, because we talk about rehabilitation, but actually what does rehabilitation even actually mean? I think we may have had this conversation before, but like from my perspective, you have to be habilitated before you're rehabilitated. So if we're trying to rehabilitate somebody back to what if they've never been there in the first place. So it's about giving people that incentive. It's about giving them that meaning. It's about building positive relationships, giving them things that they've never had within their life, within itself. And I think having more people like myself, kind of putting people on platforms that actually have a normal conversation, that we can articulate a conversation and we can do really good in society as long as we're given the chance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree, Noel. What do you think our own self-talk, like what's the responsibility of how we view ourselves in all of this? So when we're thinking about resilience, what role does self-talk or our own dialogue play?
I think it's really important to recognize yourself as a person. Like, say, for example, there's been organizations that's asked me to come and speak on their platform. Say, can you come and speak on this lived experience platform about your experience? And I'm like, no, it's not for me. And they're like, why? I said, because call me as a director of my own company, call me as a professional trainer, call me as Noel, call me as a person, and then I'd consider coming to do it, because I've turned away money for this very example, which is probably not the best business move, but I've got to stay true to myself.
Yeah.
And I don't view myself as an ex-prisoner. I don't view myself as a convict. I view myself as Noel. I view myself as a businessman. I view myself as as a son, as a brother, as an uncle, the person that I actually am. And I think the more that we humanize ourselves and take that number away from us, then that gives us back that sense of normality, which is just something that you don't get kind of within that prison environment. And I think when I think about my own positive kind of self-talk, I always kind of just reflect when things do get difficult for me, even here outside in the real world. I just reflect on where I've been, because there's been times where I've been on 23.5-hour bang up, or sometimes even 24-hour bang up for multiple periods of time. And I wished to be out. I wished to be stuck in traffic. I wished to be sitting on a park bench somewhere, just out in the real world. So that, I think that really helps me as well, to just kind of ground myself that actually what I'm going through now, I've been through a hell of a lot worse kind of within the past within itself.
Yeah. And even that is so humanizing, right? Is to like spend time envisioning like versions of ourselves. I love that. It's almost like a mindfulness technique when you're going through something really difficult, envisioning like the mundane things about life, sitting on that park bench, waiting in traffic, and then the reverse. I can do this because, and let me imagine where I've been, where I've come from.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that is still something that you're working on every day? We don't just reach that, right? It's constant practice.
Yeah, it's constant practice. Like when I think about mindfulness and just grounding myself, I don't sit in a meditation pose going ums or anything like that. You know, I could be walking, I could be doing anything kind of within my life that I'm always constantly grounding myself, whether I'm connecting to my breath, whether I'm connecting to my surroundings, whether I'm just kind of bringing back kind of happy memories or doing something that's meaningful to me, which I think that really kind of grounds me and takes me away from any kind of unnecessary thoughts, because the more that we build these unnecessary thoughts, the more it's going to build that mental tension. It's going to create that physical tension. It's going to put us into a low mental mood, which is not a place that I like to sit. And I do sit there sometimes, but I don't sit for very long. I take myself straight back out of it.
Wow, it's just incredible, Noel. It really is. I love hearing you talk about it as well, because I feel like I learned so much from you. So I feel like everybody listening as well can also learn so much from you. That was our last question for today. So, I mean, that is our whistle stop tour on your like advice and experience around resilience. I guess just to end it, any last words for anyone who's currently in the depths of it?
I think when you are struggling, it's not forever. When we think about our positive stresses, so say for example, you've got an interview in 2 weeks' time and you're stressing out over it, within 2 weeks' time, that's going to be over. So when we get out of prison, say for example, and we're trying to find that sense of belonging, don't be so hard on yourself. Don't set the bar so high. Don't put so much expectations on ourselves. Take every day as it comes. Keep that positive mindset, and you will find yourself. You will find that sense of normality, and you will build your life back together again, and a new life, a life that you didn't think that you had.
Thank you so much, Noel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Experts by Experience is brought to you by Catch22. For more episodes, visit www.catch-22.org.uk. Now playing on National Prison Radio.